I, 31 female, have lived outside of the home since I was 18. I left uni with a mid-size amount of debt, but I've managed to pay it off and also saved £8,000 over the last 10 years. I've scrimped and saved to get to this point. My parents are good people and I love them, but they have made some terrible financial decisions over the years. When my grandmother died, her house was sold and my parents received about £90,000. They treated my brother and me to a fantastic Christmas and a lovely holiday. They also renovated parts of our family home. After all this, they still had about £50,000 left and, by their own admission, frittered away the remaining money rather than saving it. By the time I started uni 2 years later, I was told that I would need to take out student loans to pay for my fees. 8 years ago, they told us that they were going to sell the family home and downsize to a flat. They managed to sell the house quickly and received about £250,000, but there was nothing on the property market that they liked, so they decided to rent for a while until they found something they did. Within 3 years, all of the money was gone. Again, frittered away with nothing to show for it. Now they're in their 60s and renting for the foreseeable future with only a small pension each. My dad will be forced to retire next year, and they can't afford their current rent without his salary. They've repeatedly asked me for loans to tide them over until payday. They do always repay the loans to me, but I've started feeling resentful of giving them money at all. My partner and I are trying to buy a flat, and all of my friends who currently own property have received help from their parents with the deposit. Not only can my parents not help me with this, they actively borrow money from my savings regularly. Earlier this week, we had a family meal for my dad's birthday. My parents asked my partner and me about our property situation and asked if we would consider buying a 2-bedroom flat so that they could move in with us and not worry about rent. I laughed at first, thinking that they were joking, but then I realized that they were serious. I told them that we wouldn't be doing that as A, we couldn't afford a 2-bedroom flat, and B, even if we could, it's not my responsibility to house them. My dad argued that he and my mum have provided for me over the years and now it's my turn to repay them. I told them that I'd been virtually on my own since turning 18 and that I shouldn't have to foot the bill just because they made poor financial decisions over the years. I said that I resent that they could have helped me with uni and maybe even a flat deposit, but instead they spent their way into a life of living hand to mouth. This did not go down well. Both of them erupted at me and called me ungrateful. My brother told me that I was entitled. Even my partner said that I was being overly harsh. Am I the idiot here? Edit, my dad works in a relatively physical job and he's struggled to keep it up within recent years. They can't force him to retire, but they can take away his duties and responsibilities until he does. My brother is unfortunately similar to my parents. If he has money in his pocket, he's out looking to spend it. As a result, he lives payday to payday. Your language was harsh, but your parents misspent at least £340,000, and £250,000 of that was gone in 3 years? Wow, they should have been able to cover their own rent and expenses without needing to dip into their house money, and now they expect to live for free off of you for the next 30 or so years? No. Stop lending them money immediately. Your parents need to learn to live within their albeit limited means. You are not the idiot. Bit ridiculous of your dad to claim he's provided for you when they've constantly needed to ask you for loans, even when they've been promptly paid back. OP, people find a way to figure things out. The problem is that the big chunks of money they received and your continued support have just enabled their bad behavior with money. My wife's mom has asked us for loans in the past and our answer has always been no. Every time she figures it out without us. I can't imagine passing away that kind of money and having nothing to show for it. Family is family, but it's not your job to look after them as they suggest. Has your mom ever worked? They both need to get jobs, buckle down and learn to spend within their means. If your brother keeps complaining about how entitled you are, well, ask him to give them a home for the rest of their lives or quit complaining. You need to go no contact with your financial situation with your parents and brother. Your parents and sibling do not need to know how much you make, how much money you've saved, or even where you live. They're moochers. They will always mooch off the person with the most. Always. Dead relatives, living children, everyone. It would help if you put a firm no discussion financial and economic boundary. Good luck. So my fiancé and I are getting married, and a friend of ours is a wedding officiant from Universal Life Church, a side gig from his full-time job. Our wedding is about 2.5 hours from home and at 6 p.m. at dusk on the top of a mountain. Our officiant lives in our hometown and we went over the contract, which is pretty basic, but a few days ago, he presented me with a bill which I think is ridiculous. Officiant fee, $250, license submission fee, $100, fuel, $48, 2 tanks of gas, hotel room, $289, in our wedding block at the hotel where we're at afterwards. I told him I would pay for 1 tank of gas since he needs 1 tank to get up and back, stretching it thin, and that's that. He already paid the $289 for the hotel room, so why pay him that? Then the $250 fee I agreed to, but $250 is a lot to stand in front of people for a 15-minute ceremony. He said to me that if I don't pay it all within 24 hours of the wedding, he will not submit the license to the town, and I don't want that. I just want a simple wedding, but he has too many fees. He said it's customary for the groom's family, or side, to pay the lodging and transportation fees for the officiant, which I never read. I thought he would give us a break, but he's stressing me out with the bill. These are the standard fees for an officiant. You pay their fee, or honorarium, which is usually higher than the amount he's seeking. He is required to take time out of his day to submit the license, drive 5 hours round trip to perform the ceremony, and then pay for a hotel room, as the officiant is normally included in the reception. He's doing things that any other officiant would have to do, and you're trying to rip him off because he's your friend? I'm so glad I'm not your friend. You are the idiot. You thought you could take advantage of a friend to get a deal. You said your wedding is late at night, so yes, he needs the hotel. His fees are reasonable. And you know officiants don't just get up there and start talking out of their butt with no preparation, right? Dude, do you know getting married costs money? You're marrying 2.5 hours away at 6 p.m. It doesn't matter if you find his fees ridiculous, it's what he's charging. If you don't want to pay for him, find someone else to be your officiant. Imagine marrying this dude. What a nightmare life. I saw that you bought a cleaner with bleach, but we already had a multi-purpose cleaner, so we don't need this indulgence. Please transfer $3.98 into the household account from your personal account to cover this expense. I think you're about to lose a friend and impart some bad karma and juju on your wedding day. Pay your friend, the officiant. I, 35 male, have been married to my wife, 33, for 5 years. I work in IT and my wife stays at home. For background info, my wife runs a women's shed at the local community centre where they do things like group crafts and discussions, and is active in online groups for this sort of stuff, relevant later. My wife is currently 20 weeks pregnant, and we had her ultrasound 3 days ago. We found out that we're having a boy. On the ride home, however, my wife was quiet the entire ride. When we got home, I asked her what was up, and she told me. She told me that she was disappointed that she would give birth to a boy. My jaw kinda dropped there, but she kept going. She said stuff about how she had a potential abuser in her belly and how she read so many stories online about how there were so many problematic men, etc. She said she didn't know how to raise a son that wasn't horrible. I'll be honest, I was blindsided, but I kept this to myself and consoled her and tried letting her vent. It wasn't pretty, and I felt sick, but it wasn't the time for my feelings. I suggested she take a break from her online group, seeing as that was the place that sparked this thought process. She got mad at that suggestion and told me she would talk to a therapist, which I encouraged. Truth be told, her therapist is not the best person for this situation. She's a good therapist, no question about that, but her views on this weren't conducive to what needed to be discussed. My wife found this therapist through her groups, and as such, the therapist has quite strong views on women's issues, which is good normally, but in this situation, I didn't think it would end well. Fast forward to today, it didn't end well. My wife came home today sobbing about how she regretted trying for a kid and how her therapist told her that she'd seen too many men raised by irresponsible parents who turned into monsters. I guess I kind of involuntarily curled my lip in disgust because she started asking me about it. When she asked, I told her that I was disgusted. I was disgusted that she'd already written off this kid before he was born. He's a blank canvas ready to be molded by his parents, friends, and the world, and his mother is already disappointed in him. I could kind of understand her view if we'd raised a monster as she talked about, but he hasn't even gotten a chance to see the world, let alone mess up. She called me a heartless idiot and how I would never understand her worry about raising a son. She then called me an idiot for not being supportive. Am I the idiot? I'm sorry, what? She knew there was at least some chance that her child would be male before she tried to get pregnant, right? What was she planning to do in that scenario? She already thinks your son is a monster because he's male. Jesus, she needs to see a different therapist who isn't going to fill her mind with thoughts that are going to lead to her hating her own child. You are not the idiot, but your wife has big issues. I feel bad for the kid. He deserves a better mother. Agree, this might be the right time to initiate couples therapy, but not with the same therapist. I don't think this is something that your wife would have thoughts of if the therapist hadn't put these ideas into her. Intervention is needed. Your wife has some cognitive distortions about your unborn son and her, as well as your, abilities to parent that are affecting you both. She probably had dreams of raising a strong, independent daughter, but maybe you can help her to see that she absolutely can raise a kind, emotionally intelligent son. It sounds like she married a good man, so it obviously can be done. She needs to apply logic to her life rather than listen to the emotional rants of the day. I'm sorry you're caught up in this. So I live with my wife and we have a blended family. My stepkids are usually with us, although right now they're with their dad for Father's Day weekend. He called me yesterday and said he wanted to discuss something the kids told him. He said they told him that my son, from my prior relationship, has his boyfriend over all the time. He said it makes him uncomfortable that his kids are spending so much time around this older boy he doesn't know. To make a long story short, our disagreement ended with me telling him that he's not a member of my household and that his opinion doesn't matter. When his kids are with him, he makes the decisions. When they're with my wife, she does. He said he always gets a say over what happens with his kids. I said, not in my house. He said I was an idiot and he was going to take my wife back to court. I asked him if he would start using all his custody days before asking for more because that might give him better odds. He told me to go screw myself. My wife is upset with me because antagonizing her ex complicates her life. I do feel bad for making things more difficult for my wife, but I also feel like this guy needed a reality check. Am I the idiot for how I spoke to him? Your stepkid's dad specifically called you out of the blue to let you know that he has a problem with you letting your son have his boyfriend over at your house, and your wife thinks that you're the one antagonizing him. And further, he threatens to take your wife to court so he can take the kids away from both of you, but he doesn't even bother to pick them up on the actual custody days that he already has. So basically, he's using his own children as pawns in whatever power game he's trying to play here, regarding dictating who your son is allowed to associate with. Not the idiot at all. Good for you for standing up to that clown. I don't think this is an older friend of your son's problem. I think this is a stepdad who might be a phobic idiot problem. It's none of his business what your son does. Since he said he was going to take your wife to court, believe him and act appropriately. Probably a good idea to not communicate verbally with him anymore, since he will most likely try to use anything you say to support his case. Don't engage further. But OP's wife has to find a way to work with this idiot for the next several years. If the stepkids were all 18 plus and the ex had zero power, then yeah, tell him to take a long walk off a short pier. But until that point, the OP needs to let his wife take point on those discussions, since she and her kids will have to deal with any consequences of OP's actions. This is not to say that OP should kick his son's boyfriend out of the house, however he can and should direct the ex to the wife, or better yet their lawyer, every single time. There's a way to stand his ground without making things worse. I'm a 33-year-old man and my wife is 27. Since the start of our relationship, my wife has been very particular about how things get done and tends to believe she knows the one true correct way for anything related to anything. She's admitted that she can be a control freak. While this bothers me, it's never been a true deal breaker in our relationship. Very often when I do just about anything, whether it be a household chore, assembling a piece of furniture, taking a picture or writing a presentation for work, in a field where I have a master's degree and she has no formal education, she'll do this thing where she'll condescendingly say, "You were so close to getting it right," really drawing out the "so close" part. I've told her dozens of times that I prefer for her to stop because it sounds so condescending, but she insists that she's complimenting me. I do the dishes and place them out to dry in an orientation she doesn't approve of. "You were so close. Next time put them that way." I take a picture of her. "You were so close. Next time angle the camera this way." I complete a project at work and show her the results. "You were so close. Next time write it this way." For the last 2 months, my wife has been undergoing an intensive hiring process for a job in our city. She works in a very niche field and seldom finds job openings. Therefore, she was ecstatic to have the opportunity for a relatively well-paying job doing what she wanted to do. She got to the very final stage where the company was considering 2 people, coincidentally the other of whom was her college roommate. Well, on Friday she got the call telling her thanks for her application but blah blah blah, record on file, all that jazz. My wife came to me crying. I immediately comforted her and said, "You were so close," I blurted out. Her head whipped up and she asked what I meant by that. I said she was so close to getting the job but was just a bit off. She immediately left to stay at her friend's house, where she's currently sulking. She finally sent me a text this afternoon calling me a huge jerk. Was I unnecessarily being an idiot here? Man, you were so close to being the idiot, but after all you've endured, not the idiot. You just confirmed that every time she's thrown that line at you, it was never meant as a compliment. She got a taste of her crappy medicine and didn't like it. It's too bad she didn't get the job, but maybe she'll realize how awful it sounds to say, "You were so close." I disagree. Everyone's the idiot here. Your wife is an idiot for constantly giving minor backhanded insults. You are the idiot for kicking her while she's down. You'll would benefit from some counselling. I don't find OP saying, "You were so close," kicking the wife when she's down. I think the issue here is that the wife felt insulted because that is what she was doing to OP all along. The way I interpret OP's "so close" statement is that the wife was so close to getting the job, which is true. It was between her and her old roommate in the final round, and the roommate got the job. This goes to show that the wife has a guilty conscience. Yeah, if she was complimenting him all the time, she doesn't get to feel offended when he does the exact same thing. She got upset because she knows what that means when she says it, and it ain't sweet. Your wife told on herself. Please make sure you point that out to her. And hey, you sound like a saint. Her nasty behaviour would have been a deal breaker to me long ago. I'd have never been married to such a person.